Hello everyone, welcome to Jack's tutorial. Today we will be talking about some of the important operating system concepts, that is process. Here we are going to talk about process, then we will talk about difference between program and process, then we will talk about some of the process states, and then finally we will conclude the session with process control block. So let's begin. What is a process? A process is a program in execution. Here we know when we want to execute any program, it must be bring in into the main memory. So that program is divided into different sections. One section contains code, another section contains the static variable, then we have stack and then heap memory. Here code section is used to store the instructions or the program. In static variable, global variables of the program are stored. Stack contains the data of a function or a program, and heap memory used for dynamic allocation of the memory. Now, let's talk about difference between program and process. So what is a program? Program is nothing but our source code. So see here, I have shown you here a source code. Now, these are nothing but the data of the program, and this is nothing but the instructions with respect to the program. This particular code or program is a passive entity because it is just a instructions data, that is just a code, it is just a text. Now this program becomes a process. This program becomes a process when an executable file is loaded into memory. Now again, as I said, a program must be loaded into the main memory, which has different sections. So I have shown here different sections: the code section, then the stack section, static variable section, and heap section. Now this is my program. The program will be loaded into the main memory, then this program get loaded into the main memory. So here I have shown you how the program is loaded. Now program instructions starts to execute. As soon as it executes int a equal to 5, this variable is stored in a stack memory. So stack memory is divided into two pieces, and one space is used for storing the data for integer variable. So here a is equal to 5 entry is made into the stack. Now this is the program. Now let's understand the difference between the process and program with the help of an example of baking a cake. Here the recipe for baking a cake is the program, and the ingredients that we use to bake a cake, that is nothing but the data. Now all ingredients will be taken, will be mixed, and then we will follow the instructions from the recipe one by one. After end of that recipe, that instructions, the cake will be ready. So when we follow the steps one after one in recipe, the state of the cake changes, and at the end we get the complete cake. So here recipe is nothing but the program, and when we are following the steps one by one and the state of the cake is changing, that is called as a process. So I hope this example clears the difference between program and the process. Now, as I said in the previous slide, when we are baking a cake, during a time that cake changes its states. Similar to that, when process is loaded for execution, it also changes the states. So what are different states of the process? A new, that means a newly process is created. That process gets all resources required for its execution except one, that is processor. That means it is having all the resources except one resource, that is resources. Now for that purpose it is admitted into the ready queue. That means all process in the ready queue are ready to execute. However, they are waiting for the one of the important resource, that is processor. When processor get allocated to the process by using scheduler dispatch, that process change the state from ready to running. Now, running state means what? The process is allocated the CPU and now the instructions are being executed by the processor. State is running. Now, when all instructions are completed with respect to that particular process, that means now process is going to exit and that state of the process is called as terminated. However, during running of the process, some interrupt may occur. Because of that, the process changes its state from running to ready. Also, during execution of the process may wants to perform some input output activity or event. For that purpose, process goes into the waiting state. And as soon as that event or input output activity completes, the process goes from waiting state to ready state. So IO or event completion. These 5 states are nothing but the process state, and this particular diagram is called as process state transition diagram. Now, the next important part of the process is nothing but process control block. It is important. Why? Because it works as a repository for any process. Here, each process is represented in operating system by a process control block PCB, which is also called as task control block. It contains what? Many pieces of information associated with a specific process, including process state. Just we have seen different 5 states of the process number, every process has its process ID or number, program counter, current status of the program or process is stored in the program counter. Current status means address of the next instruction. Okay. Then register, CPU registers. Process has the data to store and data to operate. That data is stored in the CPU registers. Then that process has memory limits, from some minimum to some maximum that a process can read and write. So that information is also available in process control block. Then the list of open files associated with the process is also there in process control block, and so on. That means we can say in brief, PCB simply serves as the repository for any information that may vary from process to process. So in this tutorial, what we have learned, we talked about a process which is nothing but program in execution. When process execute, it changes the states. So we have seen the difference between program and process. So what is a program? What is a process? We have seen the example of baking a cake, where program is nothing but the recipe, and when we follow that recipe, something happens, some state of the cake changes. That is what a process. So when cake changes the state, similar to that, process also changes the state, and that is nothing but the process state. And then finally we conclude our discussion with process control block, which is nothing but a repository of all the information with respect to a particular process.